Multiverses is out in their open beta, and we had an expansion in a Hot Wheels game for Looney Tunes Worlds. Not only you can drive as a Looney Tune, but you can visit the different landscapes of the Looney Tunes. So, of course, you realize this means podcast. Hello, and welcome to Of Course You Realize This Means Podcast. I'm your host, Jonathan Graves, and with me today, it is my pleasure to bring on voice-over artist Isi The Scribe, who's also a professional zoologist, which is just awesome because I love animals. He loves animals. Isi, welcome to the show.
Hello, Jonathan. Thank you so much for having me. I'm very, very glad that we're finally having this conversation. Thanks for having me on the show.
Me too. Yeah, this is exciting. Do you want to explain the zoologist part, or was that
it? Everybody always has a question mark over the zoology bit. Because as soon as I say, oh, I'm a poet, I'm a voice actor, I'm a zoologist, they're like, what? How does that even come in together? I'm one of those weird people that's kind of a mixed nut. So I'm a science student because my strongest subjects in school were English and biology. So,
okay.
But I've always been into animals since I was a little kid, read lots of books. I've just been animal crazy since I was young, and through a very long and convoluted story, I ended up doing a master's in wild animal biology here in the UK. And I've worked at London Zoo in different roles, from education to presenting to zookeeping to all sorts of things. And yeah, that's kind of where that is. So with regards to the zoology thing and how it feeds into the artistic stuff, I actually started doing wildlife presenting last year. So I was on a show called BBC Awesome Watch, where I did some wildlife presenting up in a place called the Lake District here in the UK. And I was talking about badgers, and I saw my first wild red squirrel, which is an endangered species here in the UK.
Oh, cool.
Mm-hmm.
Do you do the voice of a badger?
Oh gosh, I'd have to study up actually, because they're very quiet. They're quite quiet animals
Sure.
in regards. Because when I was observing one, it was kind of behind a pane of glass, and I had to be really, really quiet. But it wasn't making much noise apart from some snuffling noises and lifting up rocks and things like that. And with voice acting, I've done all sorts, like from trailers, commercials. I say commercials, like one or two commercials, mainly radio. But did my first video game, which came out this year for Blizzard, which is Diablo Immortal. And I'm in another video game, which I can't talk about, which you just finished recording. So yeah, I'm a mixed nut with regards to being an animal geek, which is essentially what a zoologist is, but I have a certificate to certify that, as well as being a writer and performer and voice person.
So Looney Gaming is such a big part of the Looney Tunes franchise because it's been with us, since the 80s. So there's a lot to break down. And in my first discussion of Looney Gaming, we had a really fun discussion around, games like Sheep and Wolf and the Tiny Toons games, Buster Breaks Loose, and my friends Elijah and Vanessa were on that show from the Kicking and Screaming podcast, which I highly recommend checking them out. But you reached out and you were excited to continue the conversation, and I'm excited to continue the conversation because there's so many more games that we have as Looney Tunes fans. And for me, playing as one of these characters actually gets me closer with them. I think that's what I take away from this, is that when consumer products puts out a game based on a movie, you get to live in that world a little bit longer. And that is a reward for being a fan. And so when you're such a big fan of Looney Tunes, they come from, theatrical release shorts, and then on TV and Saturday mornings, and, with the cereal bowl, and, you get up and you wake up, and then they're there. To have those characters allowed in a video game for you to control and you to play with, I think it definitely brings us closer as fans to the IP. And I know that whenever I was playing games, the first game I ever beat when I was 3 years old was the Bugs Bunny Birthday Bash celebration of
Oh
his
yeah.
50th, which they made into a game, which is insane. But it was Bugs Bunny going around and defeating his foes with dynamite and little carrot, like a little carrot gun or whatever. But the funniest part to me was whenever he would pick up a carrot and get a point, the Warner Brothers logo would be in the background of where the carrot was. And
Brand visibility.
exactly. But I've been a fan of Warner Brothers my entire life, and maybe it was subliminal messaging, or maybe it was just my love for the IP. I don't know. But I thought it was very effective. And so
maybe both.
Yeah, maybe both.
It's probably both. It's probably a combination of the two.
You're absolutely right. It probably is. So I want to talk to you more about Looney Gaming, and I know you want to discuss the differences between the US releases of these games and the UK releases, because they have different names.
Very much so. That always puzzled me for some reason.
But before we get there, I want to touch on some Looney news that happened while, Comic-Con is happening right now. Or Comic-Con happened last week.
It happened last week. I wish I was there, but I'm in the UK.
Exactly. I mean, so much wonderful stuff came out of that. And as you can see from the myriad of podcasts that I was able to produce with all that content, and it was joyful. There was so much love for Looney Tunes, and the creations of these new projects is exciting. But in the gaming world, we had a full-on panel of Multiverses, which is now in open beta, and you got to play it. What are your impressions of Multiverses and this new brawler game that we have, where it's Warner Brothers IP going against each other in really fun and creative ways?
So my brother, funny enough, actually calls it Warner Brothers meets Smash Brothers, which I think is a brilliant way of describing it. And
yes.
With regards to first impressions, in fact, when I first saw the trailer, I was like, oh gosh, I am all for this. Whatever this is, I am totally for this. There's something that is just hilarious. The thought of just, having a character like Batman having the ever-loving snot beat out of him by Bugs Bunny is just hilarious to me. And now there's this game where that can actually happen. I mean, I love animation and concept art and things like that. So I actually saw something like this years ago on DeviantArt, and there was just like a brawler-style stage selection, choose your character piece of fan art that was done with characters like Bugs, Mickey Mouse, SpongeBob, Fred Flintstone, Tom and Jerry as a pair. And now this is actually real. Like, this is someone actually, I don't know if someone actually saw that and then said, hey, we can make a game out of this. This is actually now real. And I'm just like, oh my days, I'm for it. Because you have DC superheroes, you have Looney Tunes characters, you have, Game of Thrones characters, Hanna-Barbera characters, Shaggy and Velma, things like that. And you have all these IPs in this one game who are basically going at it Smash Brothers style in these fantastic on-brand creative ways, and I'm loving it. I got to play it a few days ago at my local game store, and funny enough, the first character I played as was Wonder Woman because she's my favorite superhero, but I was paired with Taz on my team, and we went neck and neck, head to head with Harley Quinn and Velma, and I was freaking loving it because
that's a fun pairing.
It is, and it's been done before, like in the Looney Tunes comics, the DC comics. There was a crossover a few years ago where they had DC superheroes and Looney Tunes characters.
That's right.
In the same comics, and Wonder Woman and Taz were one of those pairings. So I'm like, oh, okay, this is happening for real. I like this. So
comics come to life.
Correct. Those comics are actually coming to life in this sphere, in this game, and I had a blast. I was just like, the colors are beautiful, the controls are really amazing. Each character has their own different set of moves. I did a little tutorial before I started playing the game and got to learn Wonder Woman's moves, but it was also pretty distracting because I loved the moves of the other characters I was trying to kick the crap out of. Like, so I was like, I kept hearing Jim Cummings' voice as Taz, doing his spin attack, and then I heard Velma doing her. She has an attack that involves a library book, I think, and a Magna Glass, and then I was just like, this is a feast for the eyes. Like, so if you're playing with friends, if you're playing with friends, there's a lot to look at, and even the sceneries and the arenas that you fight in are also on brand. They could be anywhere from Batman's Batcave to Finn and Jake's house at the top to Scooby-Doo's Haunted Mansion. So again, these very on-brand backgrounds and locations. So I am just like, I need this game in my life. I need to save up for like a PS5 or a Switch or something.
Yeah, and there have been other IPs that have tried the brawler system, and there's a Nickelodeon game out there, but none of them really made waves because they didn't take the time to implement not only just creative moves and actions, but the way that they have such a reverence for what came before, and how you have Bugs Bunny doing that like spin kick, which is actually from a Wild Hare. Like, they just went back to the source material and they were like, we need the characters to feel like the characters. Correct. And then on top of that, they went and got really great voice actors, or the actual voice actors from the IPs that they premiere in. But specifically, the one you mentioned with Velma, she's voiced by Kate Minucci.
Yes.
Who is a fantastic comic. And Jim Cummings, as you mentioned, is Taz. There's just such a wonderful attention to detail that I can appreciate as a fan, but also, as you're saying, as a fighting game. Like, it works on so many levels. Correct. And they just announced that there's going to be the Show Me What You Got level from Rick and Morty as a stage.
Yes, I did hear about that.
I can't wait. I can't wait for that. And yeah, there's many more characters to be added. It's the whole WB library. So you got Harry Potter in there. I'm hoping for Dorothy. I'm like,
oh yeah,
I want Dorothy from Wizard of Oz. I want her to click her heels and like a tornado comes,
Yes, something like that. I'm just like, the question I keep asking with regards to the Looney Tunes, I'm just like, where's Daffy? Where the heck is Daffy? Because
he's coming.
He's coming. They're planning. They're waiting to unleash that crazy duck. He's going to have some sort of jumping woohoo action. And also, with regards to some of the other characters and how on brand their fighting moves are, I played as Finn the human from Adventure Time, against Tom and Jerry, who are lethal, by the way. I hated fighting Tom and Jerry because in terms of their fighting style, they're actually not so much fighting with others as much as they're fighting with each other. Right. And Tom has a move where he has Jerry in a slingshot, and he slingshots Jerry at you as an attack. And I'm just like, okay, this is brilliant. And then there's another attack he has where he has the lids of 2 dustbins, and he smashes your head, kind of cymbal style. I'm just like, the attention to detail is just fantastic. The devs really just did their homework with regards to some of the moves. And one of the character who I hated fighting was Jake the dog. I hate him. I think he's overpowered. He was really frustrating to fight because of his morphing powers.
And John DiMaggio is back as Jake the dog.
Yes, glad to see him back. And Jeremy Shader as Finn. I met him at Comic-Con at London many years ago, actually. And I posted on Instagram about it. But I surprisingly loved playing with him as Finn because his category is as a mage. As an assassin. Sorry, he's an assassin. Okay. And I like playing as these characters that are very fast and very nimble. So characters like him, I really like. And I'm like, I really want to play as Bugs because he's fast and he's nimble. And I've also heard rumblings that he also might be overpowered, but he's Bugs Bunny, so that makes sense. I mean, come on.
Yeah. Oh yeah. You can't overpower Bugs Bunny. I mean,
it makes sense that he is overpowered.
He should be. I feel sorry for Batman who goes up against him. I'm just like, dude, you're the mouse in this cat and mouse fight. And sorry, Batman, you're going down. So, listeners, Multiverses is out there on Twitch, PlayStation, Xbox. Just go find it and try it out. It's free to play right now in their open beta. And if you play locally, this is what I was going to tell you, Issy. If you play locally, you actually have access to all the characters. You don't have to
Oh,
unlock anybody.
interesting. Okay, you're gonna have to tell me how that works because I haven't gamed in quite a while. So this was another thing I realized picking up the pad and playing Multiverse. I was like, oh gosh, I really enjoy gaming. I love this. I haven't done this in a while, but this is making me want to get the game and pick it up at some point. So I'm gonna have to chat with you about how to unlock all the characters.
Yes, absolutely. And for those that are interested in doing this, you can pick this up anywhere and, play with friends and try it out. And, put in the comments who your favorite character to play with is, because I really want to know. Mine is Finn so far.
So you share the same love. I love Finn as well.
Yeah.
So Finn and Wonder Woman.
Finn and Wonder Woman, yeah, those two are solid for sure.
Yeah.
And the tutorial, I don't know if you got to play the tutorial. The tutorial is with Shaggy.
With Shaggy, yeah. So I got to play as Shaggy, Wonder Woman, Finn, and this new character called Rain Dog, who apparently has been created specifically for this game. He was odd. He was just odd. I'm just like, why does this character exist? He's just a bit odd.
He's a bit odd. I think he's adorable, though. He reminds me of my dog.
Aww.
And he's very supportive. He helps people from falling off the stage. He has this power to telekinetically pull them back.
Yeah, similar to how Wonder Woman uses her lasso of truth to pull you back if you're falling off a cliff, which is
brilliant.
Genius.
Brilliant dynamics. I just can't get over it. And I had a conversation with the game developer, Tony, over at Comic-Con. So check that out. That was on my Multiverses chat podcast. So check that episode out. Moving on, we had another Looney game come out. This is more of an extension. So Hot Wheels has an entire game that allows you to race in these different worlds and have different IPs come in. I believe like a few months ago there was a Batman expansion, and so you had these different versions of Batman that were made into the Hot Wheels style cars. Makes sense. Like, that's a huge IP. And what's next after Batman? Well, Looney Tunes, of course. So
because why not, right?
Because why not? This expansion brings to the players 5 different cars that you can choose from that range from Wile E. Coyote to Bugs Bunny. You can have, your own customizations of these cars, but the model shape, it looks like the character's head. My favorite is Marvin the Martian, though, because it has the helmet.
It's got the helmet. It looks so epic.
Cool.
It looks like it would spew fire from the little points on top. It looks.
Oh, they should have done that. They should have done that.
It's like you could have a pyrotechnic helmet.
Yeah. So it's like the head of the character made into a car. Not dissimilar from those 90s mugs that we had.
Oh, I remember those.
Yeah. I used to drink out of Wile E. Coyote's big snout all the time.
The Wile E. Coyote mug was so impractical. He's got a really long snout.
Yeah.
I didn't drink out of that thing.
It was ridiculous. But this game is really fun because it takes the characters and puts them into the world of racing. And we're going to talk about some of those games that we had in the 90s where we actually had counterparts to Mario Kart Racing, but with Looney Tunes. This is a arcade version of a racing game. So you have your car, and then you're going through worlds that the Looney Tunes inhabit. So there's a big model of Wile E. Coyote on a rocket in the Looney Tunes level, and then you go into the woods and in the forest, and then down a rabbit hole, and then into Bugs Bunny's lair. And it's really exciting to see all this unfold before you, but also, again, the reverence and level of detail is really fun to witness. And I can't imagine how fun this is to play, because it looks like they did a really good job on the dynamics. The one thing that I would give it a point off for is that I was waiting for the voice cast to come in, because in Space Race you had you had the characters in your head, because I think they were giving narration, or they were
they had lines as they were speaking.
Yeah, they had lines. Yeah, and that was really fun. So I was missing that. I was missing that aspect.
That is true, actually.
Issy, did you check out any of these videos?
I did. In fact, one of the I can't remember which scene it was, but I remember there's a part where there are Looney Tunes. In terms of the aesthetics, they're Looney Tunes. The characters' faces are kind of in the background, like you see Bugs and Wiley and Daffy. In fact, there's some stills that are actually pictures of Daffy from the short Duck Amuck, the classic short. And then
Yeah.
there's some from
Yeah.
there's some faces of Wile E. Coyote and some silhouetted heads of Bugs as well. And it reminded me, funny enough, of the old Warner Brothers studio stores where you would walk in and you would just see all the Looney Tunes paraphernalia. You'd be surrounded by that stuff as you walk into the store. So I got a few nostalgic vibes from just looking at that kind of thing. And it does look like a really, really fun world to just kind of zip on through. And as you mentioned, the cars that they use are shaped like the characters' heads. There's a little bit of that in Looney Tunes Racing specifically, because Daffy's cart is actually shaped like a duck's bill, which looks really weird, but it's very on brand. So when I saw that the carts actually look like the characters' heads, it reminded me of some of the carts that you find in Looney Tunes Racing for the PS1. So it's like beautiful.
Cool. Well, that's a good transition. Let's go into our childhoods, if you will. I want to relive these gaming moments with you. So, Looney Tunes obviously have had games all the way back into the 80s, as I had mentioned. But we're going to touch on some of the ones that I did not touch on with my earlier dissection of Looney Gaming. And part of that is the Game Boy. In the Game Boy era, we had Crazy Castle, and that had so many different sequels to it. One of those sequels you actually see in Space Jam: A New Legacy as young LeBron is playing it on a Game Boy. And that had me inspired to talk about these Looney games. So branching off of that and sticking with a Game Boy, there was a specific game that was called Carrot Crazy. This was in 1998 and had Bugs Bunny and Lola Bunny. And, I mean, this is the first packaging I've ever seen of Lola Bunny and Bugs Bunny together.
Yes.
And this is right after Space Jam. So, yeah, and in the UK it had a different name.
Oh, yes. It was called Bugs Bunny and Lola Bunny Operation Carrot Patch. So that was the subtitle. It's a very long title, but, it works. In the US, it was just called Looney Tunes Carrot Crazy. And
I guess
there was a...
Carrot Crazy was too obscure.
It was just too obscure. People just saw Looney Tunes. Like, oh, look, it's a Looney Tunes game. It's fine. I don't care about the title. And funny enough, there was also a Sylvester and Tweety counterpart. In the US, it was called Looney Tunes Twabble. But in the UK, it was called Sylvester and Tweety Breakfast on the Run. That was the subtitle for that. So, and that's always intrigued me with regards to changing the titles in the European market as opposed to the US market. Similar to Sheep Raider in the US and Sheepdog and Wolf in the UK. And that has always puzzled me / fascinated me. I thought, oh, why do you change the name for a European audience as opposed to an American audience? I don't know. You just lazier? I don't know.
I really don't know either. And I would imagine it has to do with brand recognition. So, like, if you had the character in the forefront, it would sell better. But Sheepdog and Wolf doesn't add Ralph Wolf or Sam Sheepdog in the first name. I don't know. That one's weird.
that was weird. Like, that was in terms of, and I actually rate Sheepdog and Wolf because even though it was I found it frustrating to play kind of thing because I'm not a stealth gamer. Like, essentially it's Metal Gear Solid with Looney Tunes, but I rate the game because they took two ancillary kind of B-list obscure Looney Tunes characters, Ralph and Sam, and they saw fit to put them in a game where Ralph is the star, and people could easily mistake him for Wile E. Coyote, who they're more familiar with, but somebody saw it fit to put these two characters in a game, and it's a game that did very well. It had a lot of positive reviews. Lots of people played it. I love the cartoony aesthetic of it and how you use the Acme contraptions, but my goodness, it was frustrating to play. Like, I was like, okay, this is Ralph is Lara Croft, essentially, and this is Metal Gear Solid with vintage cartoon characters. I love it, but I'm not good at it.
Totally fair. Yeah, with Ralph and Wiley, you got to look out for that nose color. That's the key giveaway.
It's the nose.
Because the character design
and their
are very
eyes
similar.
as well. Yeah, Wiley's eyes are yellow and Ralph's eyes are white. That's another observation I made, but definitely
Oh,
the
nice.
nose.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. So yeah, Ralph's nose is red and Wiley's is black.
correct.
But it's so interesting to have these, even more obscure characters run a game like this. But this for me was one of the highlights of my childhood gaming, because it was not only was it in the universe of Looney Tunes, but it was
Of course.
also a genre that I'm really fond of. Like, I love Metal Gear Solid, and having a game like that exist for the I would say like a kid version is
Yeah,
really fun to see and
it is really
play.
fun.
Yeah,
It,
I
it's
got to
really
play with my
fun.
nephew recently, so
Oh,
that was
nice.
that was a delight.
Yeah. Well, I had fun when I got stuck on levels. I had fun watching my big brother play because he has a brain for puzzle games. He just has that kind of he's a completionist. I'm not a completionist. I play for the lulls, or I will cheat. I will use cheat codes before, which I'll get into a little bit for Looney Tunes Racing. But I just, if at first you don't, my motto was, if at first you don't succeed, call your big brother, which is what I did for a lot of games I got stuck on.
Nice. That'd be funny if it applied to everybody. So like,
Indeed. Yeah. Well, it only applies if you have an older sibling who's better at
sure.
you at gaming, essentially.
Excellent. So yeah, moving on. Let's go into Bugs Bunny and Taz in time.
What's this we business?
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I say we? Oh, silly me.
Whew, that's better.
Oh, no. Me, I can't go. Unfortunately, I must stay here to stabilize the time regulator as best as I can. But don't worry, my precious pet Tasmanian devil will go with you.
I think I'd rather go alone.
Oh, Granny's going to miss her little Tazzy boy. Yes, she is.
Oh, brother.
So this was a game from 1999 with versions on PlayStation as well as PC. So you were the one that wanted to talk about this one. I actually haven't
Correct.
played this one.
Oh, you haven't?
No, I
Okay.
haven't.
Okay.
But I love time travel. And I'm wondering why I've never played this.
Interesting. Well, have you played its predecessor, Bugs Bunny Lost in Time?
Yes.
Okay, so this is essentially the unofficial sequel slash spiritual successor to Lost in Time. So it was called Bugs Bunny and Taz Time Busters. So the way it's different from the first game is that it still has the whole concept of time travel Bugs, but this time he's been paired with Taz to basically go through these 4 time levels. So you have these eras: the Aztec era, the Viking era, the Transylvanian era, and the Arabian era. So in the previous game there were 5, I believe, whereas this one has 1 less era. And
Okay.
it has a bit more of a plot, whereas the first game kind of focused on Bugs. He stumbles upon a time machine, he pushes a lever, and he ends up in this place called Nowhere, where he meets Merlin the magician, and then he has to go find his way back, battling his old nemesis, I don't even know if I'm saying that right, in different time periods. So the way Time Busters differs is that Granny is in this game as well. Granny has hired Daffy Duck as an exterminator to exterminate a mouse who's causing her a lot of problems. The mouse looks suspiciously like Hubie or Bertie, and
Okay.
Daffy inadvertently destroys Granny's time machine, and it scatters gears all over these 4 time periods, and Bugs somehow ends up in the mess of it, and Granny kind of, in her very warm, benevolent way, kind of almost recruits him, or almost, in a way, kind of almost manipulates him into helping her to kind of find the gears back and get Daffy, because Daffy is also lost in time. He
Okay.
actually ends up in the Aztec era. But the difference is there's a 2-player co-op mode where you play as Bugs and or Taz. And the reason Taz is here is because he is Granny's exotic pet. As you do,
As you do.
get a Tasmanian devil, why not? And Tweety also appears in this game as kind of a helper, but
Okay.
Sylvester is nowhere to be seen. I strongly suspect Taz might have eaten him, but that's just a speculation.
That checks out.
It checks out. I'm just like, there's Tweety, there's Taz, but where's Sylvester? And it's like, no, Taz ate him. Like, okay, that tracks. But the
Tweet is
premise
over
of
here like, remember the putty cat?
is that
Where'd he go?
where did the putty cat go? Is that Taz not know. I don't know. Yeah, Taz AM. That's the story, and I'm sticking with it.
That's brilliant.
So yeah. So in terms of game, sorry, what
really
did you say?
fun story. That's a really fun story. I like the dynamics of this, and I the whole time you were saying, this storyline about Daffy and Bugs, I was like, so how does Taz get involved? And then the exotic animal came up. That's brilliant. But also, Granny is Granny the original Doctor Who? Because
I think she is more or less
a time machine, just lying around.
Just lying around. She just happened to have this time machine in this region in the game called Greenwich. See what they did there? And she's the keeper of the time machine. For some reason, we are not told. And she has a pest problem. She hires Daffy. Daffy doesn't have, the best track record of dealing with rodents, in his tussles with Speedy Gonzales. So he was a terrible choice, really. But he ends up breaking the machine. He ends up stuck in the Aztec era, which is the first era you go into. And then Granny has to tutor Taz and Bugs, and they basically have to put aside their differences and actually work together to go through the 4 different time periods. The collectibles are gears to fix the time machine. You also collect carrots, which are for your health, for health points. And the more gears you collect and the more gems that you collect. Daffy's actually stolen a gem. There's a time gem that actually powers it as well. So to completely complete the game 100%, you have to get all the gears in all the 4 eras, defeat all the era bosses. And there are 3 boss tokens to defeat a boss in each era, which I'll get into in a little bit. And then once you collect all of the gems, you've essentially completed the whole game. But Bugs and Taz have different attributes. Like Bugs, for example, can pick up single-handed objects like mallets. He can throw balls. But if Taz picks up those objects, he'll eat them. Like that's the animation in the game. He will actually eat them. So it's a significant improvement aesthetically and how the game handles. It's a lot more fluid. The animation's a little bit better. It still has the blocky polygon graphics of the PS1 era that we were familiar with. And there was a lot of those in Bugs Bunny Lost in Time, but they've since improved on that in Time Busters. So
there are times when I was playing Bugs Bunny Lost in Time where I was like, I don't know if this is the item or if this is part of like the blocky level. Mm-hmm. So I'm so glad that they updated that.
Yes, they updated that, and Bugs, in terms of even how the characters move, it's a lot more fluid in terms of the animation style. And with regards to the bosses of those eras, you have Yosemite Sam in the Aztec era, Elmer Fudd in the Viking era, and his boss battle is actually inspired by the What's Opera Doc classic shorts.
Yeah, and that's great.
And then in the Arabian era, you would think it would have Hassan from Ali Baba Bunny, the classic shorts. Yeah. But it's actually a character that is not a Looney Tune. He's called Baba Chop, which I'm assuming is based on Ali Baba, which to me was really odd because even though he doesn't look anything like Hassan, he has his characterizations and his mannerisms, and he even says Baba Chop and when he goes after Daphne. So I'm like, why didn't they just use Hassan? I don't understand. This is really weird. So that was the one weird boss with regards to this game.
Maybe they thought it was offensive at the time.
There's a possibility.
It is offensive. but for the game, they were like, let's try to like skirt this a little bit. So that makes sense.
That was my speculation with regards to that as well. And then the last boss in the Transylvanian era is not Gossamer. It's actually Count Blood Count, which is...
Oh, what?
Yes, this is the first time...
Blood Count is in a video game?
Is in a video game. This is the first time he's ever appeared in a video game. So, and at the time, I hadn't seen the short Transylvania 65000. But when I saw Count Blood Count, I was like, oh, this is a Looney Tune character. But I haven't seen the short. I'm like, okay, what's he going to be like? And... so I was just like, okay, this is really cool. We're going to have Bugs and Taz versus Dracula in this way.
Does he turn into a Bat-a-lot?
I'm trying to remember now. He doesn't, but he does fly at you, and he does lift up bits of the ground and says, now I will crush you. So he does that in the game, and you have to jump on him as he's holding up the tile, so you kind of squash him. Okay. So that's kind of how that boss battle works. In fact, him and I think Baba Chop, they were actually the more elaborate boss battles
Okay.
in the game. They were the ones I enjoyed the most. Whereas with Sam and Elmer, they're pretty easy and they're pretty straightforward. You can get them pretty much like that.
Just like Looney Tunes.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool. I gotta track this game down. I'm really interested in playing this.
It's a lot of fun. Yeah, one of the few titles that didn't have a variant title depending on region.
Yeah, but yeah, definitely a sequel to Bugs Bunny Lost in Time.
Yeah. That for me was like the Sonic 2 of the Bugs Bunny time travel games. At least for me.
You know, there's something about Looney Tunes and TMNT and time travel that just works for me. It's like peanut butter and jelly. Like, it goes really well together.
It goes very well. They've used the time travel concept in many a game for Looney Tunes and TMNT.
Moving on, I did want to touch on another Looney game, two games that came out the same year. I don't know how that works. I don't know who's sitting at a desk going, you know what? We need 2 Looney racing games, but let's put them out in the same year.
On different consoles.
On different consoles. One is for the PlayStation, and then the other is for the Dreamcast. So the PlayStation 1 was Looney Tunes Racing, and these games are not alike at all.
No.
They're completely different games, different developers and everything.
Yep.
So do you want to talk on Looney Tunes Racing, and then I'll grab Space Race?
Absolutely, yeah. So my speculation with regards to these 2 games being released in the same year, because it was kind of like the end of the 90s, the start of the early aughts, the millennium. So they had this marketing campaign for the Millennium Bugs. And then there were also, because there was a lot of craziness with regards to the Millennium Bug. So they made the Millennium Bugs, and they had games for the new Millennium. So I suspect that's why they did this. That's my speculation.
Wow.
I strongly suspect, because I remember opening a game magazine and seeing Bugs Bunny Lost in Time advertised, and then seeing all these other games, one of which was Space Race, and another of which there were others on the N64 like Taz Express, Duck Dodgers, and it said games for the new millennium. So Looney Tunes Racing, funny enough, wasn't one of these, but I had this, and I grew up, I'm a big Crash Bandicoot fan, and I also had Crash Team Racing, which was addictive. I freaking loved that game. And then when I got Looney Tunes Racing, because I'm such a diehard fan, as I played it, I was just like, this kind of looks like Crash Team Racing in some respects. And it didn't handle as well control-wise. It was very loosey-goosey in some ways, whereas I found the controlling for Crash Team Racing a lot more secure.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. And you start out with a roster of 6 characters. You have Bugs, Daffy, Taz, Lola, Marvin, and Wily, and they all have their custom carts. So Marvin's cart, for example, is based off of the Martian maggot, his spaceship.
Yes.
And Bugs' cart is shaped like a carrot, but there's lots of other unlockable characters throughout the game, and the different racing levels are based on different areas and different backgrounds from different classic shorts. So there's one of my favorite racing levels is a track called You Belong in Pictures, which is based on the short You Ought to Be in Pictures with Porky Pig and Daffy. You're racing around the Warner Brothers movie lot, and you're coming into contact with all the props, and there are obstacles. There's items that you can use to throw off your other players, things like custard pies. You can drop anvils on other players, and you have there's a tier system for the collectibles, in that you collect these tokens. There's green, red, and blue, and the higher the tier, the more effective the weapon you have is. So at the bottom tier, you might have just an ordinary custard pie, which might go anywhere. But at a higher tier, you could get a homing custard pie, and then you can use it to accurately hit your enemies. And then at the highest tier, you can get like an anvil, and you can drop anvils on all of your opponents, which is so satisfying to do.
So Looney Tunes.
Yeah, but I have to admit with this particular game, because again, I'm not a completionist and I play for the lulz, I use cheat codes to unlock the other characters, because I stumbled upon a gaming magazine, I think it was PlayStation Gaming or something, and at the back of it, there were all these cheat codes for these different games, one of which was Looney Tunes Racing. And I'm seeing all these passwords to get other players. I'm like, what? There's Sylvester, there's Granny, there's Gossamer, there's Hector. I'm like, what? I have to get this. Give me a pen. So I pretty much scribbled down all of those. And there were also cheat codes for Crash Team Racing as well. So I could get other characters from that game. So I was like, I need a pen. I need a pen now. So put those all in, got a whole menagerie of the Looney Tunes roster. And they also include kind of B-list Looney Tunes characters like Rocky, Evil Scientist, and even Smokey the Genie is a playable character in that game from Aladdin His Lab, that short. So it's like the diversity of players is a lot bigger than, say, Space Race, where I think you only have maybe 8 or 9 Looney Tunes characters to play with.
Yeah, you had way more characters to choose from, for sure. That game sounds really fun, though. And,
it is.
I'm really sad I missed out on it. But I did play Space Race. And there was a specific design flaw that I had such a such a hurdle with. And the mechanics are not as fluid as even Crash Bandicoot Racing had those really nice like turns and everything. Like you felt like you're driving a vehicle, whereas Space Race felt like you were driving like a hovercraft the entire time, and it was just like swaying and
oh gosh,
turning was really difficult. I don't know if it was the same for the Looney Tunes racing game that you were just saying, if it was the same dynamic. Because you said you were having flaws with the mechanics there too.
It was similar. You had kind of a power slide function that you could use as well to kind of gauge for corners.
Okay.
It was a lot more loose. So that was, but I didn't know how to power slide at the time. That was kind of a learning curve. So unless you know how to do that and how to implement that, you can have a pretty frustrating time. So, for example, one of the characters, Yosemite Sam, is a very fast racer, but he doesn't handle corners very well. He's very kind of all over the place. So unless you know how to use the power, it's pretty chaotic, as his personality is.
Yeah.
So he's quite a hard character to maneuver in that regard. But Space Race, in terms of the mechanics and the turning, that just sounds really just all over the place. I was watching playthroughs of that as well, and I was like, this looks like this could give me trouble.
It was terrible. I was so excited for this game. I think I got it for my birthday that year. I was so excited for this game to come out, and it finally did, and I got it for my birthday, and I opened it up, and you know the packaging is so cool because it's Yosemite Sam chasing Daffy in space on rockets, and you're like, how can this be bad? This looks awesome.
This looks like a good time.
Yeah. And then
it looks like a good time.
The inside pamphlet has the characters wearing like leather jackets, like black leather jackets. I think.
That was the box art for the European version for the PS2. Because they had, I remember that version. It was the box art for the PS2 version of Space Race, and it wasn't even called the Looney Tunes Space Race. It was just called Space Race, and the Looney Tunes were on the cover. So I thought, this is odd.
You go from like having to spell it out with Bugs Bunny and Lola, like literally spelled out, to just Space Race. It's just race in space.
Yeah, you've got the 4 characters. You got Bugs, Daffy, Sylvester, and Wily on the cover. You know who these characters are. We don't need to spell it out for you.
No. So Space Race had a menu that had the most difficult gaming design I've ever seen. So basically, it's like time trial, challenge, Acme events, race, and then instead of just saying like you click on race and then you have all the settings, they have another one where it says multiplayer, and it's Bugs and Sylvester. And that confused me so much as a kid, because I'm like, okay, wait, I want to race, but I want to race with my friends. So do I click multiplayer or do I click race? And so I just have like this weird existential crisis before I can even play this game. And and I finally get into it, and I figure all the mechanics out, and I'm still like wondering why they had it separated. Yeah, this game was so frustrating. Between this and Death Valley Rally, I don't know which one had more bizarre mechanics that were installed. It feels like they didn't really understand racing mechanics, and it just, like, you're all over the place, and it's really hard to just go forward, Yeah,
because it's swerving in left and right kind of thing. So it's not, that doesn't make for a fun time. I mean, it's a fun game and it's a good concept, but if you have that, if you have that in there where you can't really control your vehicle and it's going left and right and swerving, then it just kind of makes for a frustrating gaming experience.
Yeah, absolutely. It did really
Yeah.
have it did have really great art, and it had really fun loading screens. There's a
Oh,
really
okay.
fun one where it's in the pyramids, and Daffy and Wile E. Coyote are dancing like the Egyptian, and yeah, I mean,
That's fun.
it's just I would say it's a missed opportunity all around. You know, the game came out with medium to low ratings, but
Yeah,
I
yeah,
was just so excited for a Looney Tunes racing game because I had never played one, before,
yeah,
and
same.
now that I know that there's another one out there, I might go try it.
Go try it. Yeah, you just reminded me real quick with regards to Looney Tunes Racing. They also have like tournament challenges as well. There's like 3 different ones, and they're
Yeah.
called Stinker, Rascal, Stinker, and Despicable, respectively, which is just brilliant, brilliant branding. And it also had like a function where you could either play with your friends or compete with each other in the multiplayer function. Because I believe the PS1 also had the multi-tap accessory add-on where you could plug it into the PS1 and have 4 controllers and play with 4 of your friends at the time. Certainly with Crash Team Racing, that was the case. And I suspect it was the same with Looney Tunes Racing.
Yeah. I think the multiplayer button in Space Race was like the Mario Kart Battle kind
Mm-hmm.
of situation, but I don't really remember. I think it was more just one-on-one races, whereas race was
Yes.
like a big like group of things. But they should have done a battle level.
Oh, they didn't do a battle level in Space Race.
No, no,
Okay. I'm trying to remember if they did. I think they did one for Looney Tunes Racing.
they did.
And yes, yeah, I think they did. If my memory serves me correctly, because for the most part I played just kind of the races with me and my brother, but they did have kind of battle challenges, and then you have challenges where you race with other Looney Tunes characters, and if you beat those challenges, you unlock a character. Usually, it's the character you raced against. So if you race against Porky and you win, you unlock Porky. That sort of thing.
Oh, okay, that's cool. Well, just like the Dreamcast, this Looney Tunes Space Race was short-lived and just sat on my walls looking pretty. So
It died a quick death.
yes, very quick death. Well, Issy, this has been fantastic talking to you. Were there any other games you wanted to bring up real quick while I have you?
You just reminded me. I had Crazy Castle 4 as well on the Game Boy, and also a Speedy Gonzales game as well. I think the subtitle was Los Gatos Banditos. And when I saw the cover art for Los Gatos Banditos, I believe it was done by David Alvarez, who was a fantastic animator and illustrator of the Looney Tunes.
And
When
friend
I
of the
saw it,
podcast.
yes, friend of the podcast. I remember
Yeah.
the episode. I loved that episode. So those are 2 other games that I had growing up on the Game Boy Color specifically, as well as
Cool.
Looney Tunes with Bugs and Lola.
That's awesome. Yeah, and Dave Alvarez just announced that he's been drawing these characters for over 20 years. So yeah, it's he's been doing these for a while,
I think he's one of
and
the best.
he is one of the best. He's one of the best,
Yeah,
and I can't wait to have him back on the show.
yeah, he gives them new expressions, and I just love how he masters squash and stretch, to the nth degree for these characters, and I just love the new expressions that he gives them in the comics. Because I grew up reading the comics as well, and when I figured out who Dave Alvarez was, I was just like, okay, I want to read every comic that Dave Alvarez has drawn.
He's truly a throwback artist to those early cartoons and like the designs that those early directors gave them. So absolutely, and yeah, the squash and pull are perfect. They really elicit those comedic antics that Looney Tunes pull off so well.
Completely.
Well, Issy, thank you so much for joining me. Where can people find you online?
So I am on all the things. It's at Isi The Scribe, ISITHESCRIBE on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn. I also have a website, www.isithescribe.com rather, not .co.uk. It's isithescribe.com.
Okay.
So you can find samples of my work. You can follow me on all the things. And yeah, I'm not hard to track down because I'm a voice actor, so we want to be very easy to find so people can give us work.
Awesome, and thank you for doing the voices earlier on. That was really fun.
You're most welcome. Taz like Jonathan.
Thank you. And you can follow the podcast over at Twitter at OFC This Means Pod, or This Means Podcast on Instagram and Facebook. And you can always check out the Podbean, where we have all of the blog posts and images to go along with the podcasts. And follow us along and share the episodes if you have Looney Tunes fans in your life and they want to learn more about what's going on in the franchise. And yeah, it's just always a good time. So with everything that we've talked about, there's so much more coming, and
I'm glad for it. I'm all here for it, and I'm so happy. Thank you for having me on this, Jonathan. It's been a blast talking to you.
Thank you for coming on and sending us down that rabbit hole. And as always, that's not all, folks.
Hello, ma'am. Daffy Duck, better than a shoe, exterminators. I believe you're in need of our A1 super duper pest removal services.
I'm also in need of a tissue. Oh, please come in, come in. I've been having trouble with this monster for a while now.